This chart, this is the last chart like this I'm going to share with you. Remember I said that our relationship to the sun changes. The red line is the intensity of the sun's energy reaching the earth. Here's present day. Here's 5,000 years ago, the last world age. Here's 10,000 years ago. And what I want you to see is this. I'm going to do this really quickly. There's 5,000 years ago. I'm sorry, there's today, there's 5,000 years ago. If you draw a line from the intensity of the sun then to now, what you see, I'm going to clean this up. Let's clean this up a little bit. There it is right there. The intensity of the sun reaching the earth today is almost precisely where it was 5,000 years ago, the last world age. And if you go another 5,000 years, 10,000 years ago, it's very close to where it was then as well. I wrote a book called Fractal Time. I know some of you have that book. And this summary is in Fractal Time. These are some of the major parameters, the magnetism, global warming, the ice, and the energy from the sun over the last two world ages averaged together. Historically, the magnetic field of the earth has been between 5.5 and 10.5. On this scale, right now we're at 7.5, okay? That means we're where we should be. That's why I'm showing this to you. I don't want to get real technical. I just want you to see that Earth isn't broken. Historically, the Earth does warm 1 to 2 degrees Celsius as we go through this. We're globally around 1.5 degrees Celsius. Some places it has warmed more, and that may be because we contributed to the global warming. That could be. We didn't cause it, but we have contributed. The polar ice melts as we go through these cycles. It's melting now. The sun's energy, there's a sharp increase, and that's exactly what's happening now. So what does this mean? The bottom line for me, the bottom line is that we appear to be on track for the physical changes, the physical conditions that come at the end of a world age. This is what our ancestors tried to tell us. So I am less concerned about the physical conditions and more concerned with how we treat one another as we go through the changes. I'm more concerned with how we deal with the personal and the social and the cultural changes. Now, I'll just share with you, I'm going to deviate from facts. This is a Greg-ism. This is my personal feeling. Here's what I think we're seeing right now. I think what we're going to see is that the changes, if you look at the chart, here's the chart. World age changes are really intense, and we're living some very intense changes right now. But they're also brief. The warming doesn't last forever and ever and ever. As a matter of fact, many scientists believe the warming topped out, and we're now moving into what comes next, and it's what comes after the warming that's more of a problem than the warming. What comes after the warming? Global cooling. Why is that a problem? Here's the reason why. It affects the northern hemisphere more than the southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere is where most of the land is. It's where most of the people live. It's where our food is grown. That's what we ought to be getting ready for. In my opinion, it's what comes after the warming cycle. But I sense that this is what's happening. I think that the transition period shown in these geologic changes, I think this and the social changes are becoming so intense that they will force us to work together in ways that we never have before because we need to get through the changes. I think we're seeing that begin. But I also believe that what will happen is that even when the changes are no longer present, we're going to find that we're better people and we have a better world because we work together, and we'll continue working together when we're not going through all these crises. And by doing that, I think we will meet the most beautiful prophecies of our ancestors that say we have a new world that looks very different from the world of the past. The changes will force us to work together, and then when the changes are no longer there, we'll continue to work together. Do you think that's possible? I think that's exactly where we're going. I also think we're having a rough road to get to that point. I'm not saying that's all a bed of roses, and this is what I want to talk about today. This clock was created in 1948, I believe is the date, 1948. It was a clock created by the atomic scientists, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. In 1948 was 3 years after the detonation of the first nuclear bomb. The feeling was that the world was very close to making some bad decisions. And every year, how many have seen this clock before? Some have, some haven't. Every year, the scientists, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, they update the clock. They move the hands on the clock to tell us how close we are to the worst decision, which is midnight. Okay, midnight is a bad day for Earth. And every year they update this to tell us where we are. Well, this is now 2011. The nuclear threat is less of a threat, so now they take into consideration other factors that are going on, like climate change and many of the crises that we're looking at. They incorporate those. In March of this year, May of 2011, this is where they put the hands on the clock. It's right around 6 minutes before midnight. Okay, 6 minutes before midnight. It's not the end, but I'd like to see us more like, half past midnight or something like that. What they're saying is this. It's not a doomsday prophecy. It's a heads up. It's a heads up saying, look, we're getting dangerously close to one of two things, to either making some really bad decisions or making some really good choices. And this is the scientists of the world telling us this. Bad decisions or good choices. You and I have the opportunity, this rare, absolutely rare, precious, pivotal moment to tip the scales in our favor in a way that has, to the best of my knowledge, has never happened here on planet Earth. And you're all part of it, and you're all vitally important, even the person making that call. Whoever's on the other end of that cell phone is vitally important. And they want to be here right now. All right. So it is true. We are living this time, this zone of extremes. A zone of extremes. The experts are telling us we must act. They're saying we must act. My question and what led to the book is how? How are we supposed to act? How can we possibly, I'm just going to ask you this, how can we possibly make the greatest choices of our survival until we understand the deepest truths of our existence? How can we? And here's the reason that's important. Here's the reason why. The way that you and I, we're in this together, the way that we answer a single question is the key. I'm going to ask you this question in just a moment. The way that we answer a single question, it's a key for every decision that you're ever going to make in your life or that you ever have made. It's the basis for every choice that you have ever made or will make now. The way you answer one question, it's at the heart of every challenge that has ever crossed your path. The way you answer one question. And the question is deceptively simple. If you're asking yourself the question, it's this. Who am I? Because there's a lot of us together, it's who are we? And you may say, well, what's the big deal about that question? The way that we think of ourselves in the world, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to one another, our relationship to the earth and beyond, is the basis for the choices we make, the policies we enact, the laws that we pass, and the way that we solve our problems. It's all based in the way we think of ourselves. Suddenly, this becomes a question, I don't know what could be more important than how we think of ourselves. Who are we? Well, here's why this is important. I have spent the bulk of my adult life looking for the answer to that question from many different perspectives. And I love to look at this slide. Ty heard me talk about this last week. Because people have pointed out to me that my search is documented by the length of my hair over the years. And then during the book signing, somebody told me it's also documented by the color of my hair over the years. So, it is what it is. My journey has taken me. And some of you have shared the journey with me. And you're here anyway. And thank you both for being here. And they survived and came back, and here we are. My journey has taken me into some of the most amazing places in the world. 2 more people who have taken the journey with me. And you're still alive. I think the hardest part of this program is that every one of the slides I'm about to share with you has a story. And I'm not going to be able to share the story because of the interest of time. But my journey has taken me into some of the most amazing monasteries, what is called the roof of the world, the highest elevations on the Tibetan plateau, and very humble mud brick monasteries in the deserts and the mountains of Egypt. I've had the opportunity to be in many of the beautiful, magnificent temples throughout Southeast Asia and be with young monks who open the doors to hidden libraries to share with us what it is they know that we forgot. And I've had the opportunity to look at these books, in some cases translate them myself, so I know what I'm actually reading. And they come from even older sources of knowledge. And what's in these books is translated into many other traditions that I've had the opportunity to see firsthand. And as different as they are from one another, there are common themes that flow through all of these traditions. And I've had the opportunity to share the time with men and women who live those traditions in their lives. These are the sadhus in outside of Nepal, the tantric masters in northern India. I've had the opportunity to meet with the monks and the nuns and the abbots and the lamas and some of the most sacred and cherished traditions, the holy women that are still alive today that share and preserve this knowledge and this wisdom with us. I've had the opportunity to meet and spend time and share time with the shaman in the high Andes of Bolivia and Peru, and with many of the indigenous musicians throughout the world who share the power of their sound to open our hearts. The power of their sound to open our hearts. I've had the opportunity to meet beautiful pilgrims like this man that full body prostrations across the Tibetan plateau for 8 months to be at the temple where I met him. What he's wearing on his hands are the pads to keep his hands from rubbing raw as he goes down into the next full body prostration. 8 months across the Tibetan plateau. Beautiful nomads. I mean, look at this woman's eyes. Look how clear she is. All of them, as different as they are from one another, these people live in a world whose traditions allow for the change that we are living right now. They've known it, they expected it, they anticipated it. Western world, the modern world, the world of science that began 300 years ago doesn't allow for these traditions. It hasn't allowed for the cycles of nature and the cyclic changes of the earth and what it means to us. So we have a lot to learn from our ancestors if we have the wisdom to acknowledge and embrace what they have preserved for us. For over 5,000 years, our ancestors did their very best to answer the question, who are we? It's only been the last 300 years that science tried to do the same thing. 300 years since about the time of Isaac Newton is when we say the scientific method first began. Whoops. There's a problem. You're going to see this slide a lot. There's a problem. For 300 years, science has tried to answer the questions, who are we? The problem is this. Science doesn't believe the scientific answers. Science finds the answers and they say, oh, that can't be the answer because that changes everything. So we'll put that answer over here. The quantum stuff that tells us we're all connected, we'll put that over here. Science is stuck on the big questions of life. Now, I'm going to make a distinction between science and technology. The technology of our iPads and iBooks and iPhones, awesome. The cloud, awesome technology. But the big, deep questions of life. For 300 years, the best minds of our planet with the most money and the most machines have been asking these questions, and they're looking within the parameters that they have been led to believe are true. They don't have the answers yet. Don't you think if we were on the right track after 300 years of the best minds and the most money and the biggest machines and the most expensive technology, we would have those answers by now? Don't you? If we were on the right track. Science still has not answered the question, what is life? They cannot come up with a definitive answer for life. Science still cannot tell us how life began. Science can't tell us how we began. We're going to talk about this in a minute. They're still looking for the unified field theory. If we were on the right track, don't you think we would have that theory by now? They've written consciousness out of the equation, and they're wondering why they can't get the unified field theory to work.